Good afternoon. How are you? Well, I'm back in Northern Virginia. It's always good to be here. We were driving last night because we had both an ill pig we're concerned about, and I have writings I have to do on behalf of clients. So we had to get back. And I don't like driving very much, frankly. Maybe you do, but well, and also driving in the dark isn't much fun. We very much enjoyed the conference of the soil and water conservation districts that convened down south in the beach area in Virginia from all across the Commonwealth of Virginia. And the positive thing is how we're able to underwrite what's called best management practices to hopefully maintain as best we can the soil we have and the water that we have in need. And we also celebrated a farm in our area that we had worked with, and that kind of celebration infuses in people both the knowledge that they need to protect the soil and water, but also it's always nice to get an award. These are big awards, and I'll put up a picture of one of them. The news continues to be disheartening. It is hard to believe that religion based on the scriptures we read could generate such hate and suffering and pain, and that people would then choose sides as to who is the, least painful, most justified in killing others. And then consider that at the base it appears that somewhere this comes from the myth of a religion. That is, something you can't touch, that does not exist, and that is a hypothetical possibility at the time of your death, that as a registered but not voting Roman Catholic, I was encouraged to believe that I would enjoy a beatific vision for all eternity. And I've had people I respect, including Joseph Campbell, once say, I don't know what that would be like, looking at the face of God all the time. We have religions that don't say the name. Yahweh, he who is and causes to be, is something that by worship is not said. And it's discouraging that the beliefs of modern times, if you will, seem to stand on the shoulders of what they now call paganism or Egyptian rites of resurrection and so forth. In other words, we have people across this globe saying they believe in a constellation of divinity or a way to live life, and then they set about to discriminate and destroy others who don't agree with them. Some think that's simplified, but when the manifestation in this real world, in this temporal existence, is suppressed and destroyed by those who believe in things they can't touch and don't know about. I've heard one comic, Bill Burr, talked about how he didn't unfriend the Mormons because a helicopter came down and a divinity stepped out, or a representation of one. He said then he examined his own religion, and I'm not going to do that because I don't mean this to be offensive. And people can believe whatever they want to get along in their life. But the problem becomes, and this is why we do have separation of church and state, notwithstanding that asshole Jones, who's now the Speaker of the House, that we can't impose upon others these beliefs, because they are beliefs without proof, without foundation. It's just, I believe. And I don't know if someone's indigestion would lead them to write an entire book of the Bible, but when you talk to anybody who claims to be a believer, they don't know what's in that book. I once talked to somebody about the book of Job, and I said, it's an interesting book, that you would believe God would be making a bet with the devil about what he could do to Job to show that Job cared for him, God. And when God had actually destroyed everything in Job's life, he won the bet, and then he restored Job. What the hell kind of a religion is that? I apologize to those who understand the Old Testament better than I, but it does appear that if one has to question one's belief, as I did sometime in college, because a young lady, brilliant lady from Ohio, Oberlin College, we had great affection for each other, and she said she wanted me to explain so she could convert to Catholicism. And when describing it to someone else, it became pretty clear that it has, how shall I say, unreasonable demands upon one's ability to perceive and understand this imminent, ineluctable way of living. Now, yes, I'll reach into the Bible because there's a lot of truth in there. But I don't find it to be truthful or anything one can confirm when we talk about the facts of life. And some say it's terrible to think that this life will end and then there'll be nothing. Why? That's it. That's the way it is. We have this special gift we share, and then we are no more. Why is that hard to believe? And, you know, in the best case, some can say I'm agnostic, that it hasn't been proved to me. Well, that's kind of a backward way of saying there's no evidence of this thing happening. So here we have in the Middle East, which is front and center, the current religious war, or whatever, war about land, war about families, in which people are going at each other until one or the other ultimately kills the other. This is humanity. This is a product of centuries of religion. Anyhow, I'm sorry if some who are believers find this offensive. But when I've spoken to Christians, and I go to church to these people and talk to them, I said to one that if you really want to sustain, if nothing more than a method and operation of behavior, then you should speak out against these churches wherever they are that would discriminate and hate and insulate and isolate and hurt others. Because that's sure not love thy neighbor as thyself, to borrow from the Christian manner of expression. And so why today does this come to me? And I don't fault one side or the other, I fault both sides. The Israelis said, go to the southern section of Gaza and you'll be let alone. They did, and now they're bombing the living daylights out of that section. And I'm sure there's some way that they have magical bullets that do not hit women, children, citizens. Now, Hamas, would they do the same thing? Or is this just one bully that has an advantage over the other because we, the United States, are feeding this thing? It has more weight to me when Bernie Sanders says what he says. So I apologize to everybody that feels differently about this, but this is nothing to take sides in for one or the other. This requires that this stop and stop now. You know, when we're shooting down drones and people elsewhere, or, you know, testing the waters of a larger conflict, we're dealing with the whole damn planet. And now, let's return home for a minute. In a world of fiction, if you will, we have a myth that many people believe, and that is that Trump somehow or other was cheated out of an election, though there's not a single fact that supports it, not one anywhere. Not through the 60 cases we had, not through the bullshit defenses he presents now. And in those defenses, he has come up with the idea that it was a sting operation, the demonstration at the Capitol, conducted by the FBI. Oh, hell, why not have aliens involved that have made a secret deal with the White House to protect Biden in office? I hesitate to say it. There are people out there who can believe this nonsense. And when there is no fact, no reasonable way of looking at a situation, how can you have anything but chaos and hurt and hate? It's just, well, I say what that poem says, the center is not holding. And if we do not grab the center, the world may be in a universal conflagration before we ever get to our own presidential election. And, okay, everybody can say it hasn't happened yet, but it can, and it will. And if the will of those of us around the planet do not understand what the Middle East means, and here in America do not understand what is going on in terms of leading us toward an autocracy, we can't be said to have kept our eye on the prize. Rather, we can only be said to have risked the comity that on our best moments we say is our will. Sure, the Christian view is love thy neighbor as thyself. Well, be civil at least. If you're not going to love them, isn't that a step better back from hate to be civil? I was talking to some people at this conference about a meeting we had, and I encouraged the notion of talking about something that some people thought was controversial. And I understood that, and there was a concern that it would be civil. And we spent a little time talking about it, and quite divergent views on the issue were heard at a panel discussion. Now, the participants did live in their minds, and it didn't involve religion. And I don't really think it involved politics, but it did make choices cultural having to do with how we use land and the science of solar cells and things like that. Okay, minor issue, but building blocks. If you can do that in a minor issue, relatively minor issue, then why can't we do it on the bigger issues? And my dad told me as a kid, why do we have wars? And he said it was to limit population growth. Now, my dad didn't go past high school, but he lived in the world and fought in World War II and was trained, and he obviously had a DNA that I profited from. And in terms of my opportunities and ability to make my way in the world, not everybody has the DNA. And my dad once said to me that he didn't have anything much he could pass on to me but a name, and he asked me to take good care of it. And so I've tried to do that. We didn't have much in terms of a temporal world of money or benefits or things like that, but we didn't know any better, and we were very comfortable as a family together. And I appreciate as I get older what a difference that can make for your entire life, because I've seen through clients and politics and just living what happens to some people. So live your religion, but really live it. If there's an aspect of it to embrace all humanity, do that. But do not try to impose on us a right to kill other people because of your religion. Do not think that you should be in civil government, given the demonstration of religion throughout my life and for thousands of years before that, to compromise what can be done by what people believe that is in the mist and yet destroys the temporal reality where we dwell. So I apologize to those who find great comfort in religion. I celebrate that you can do that. But if you come near telling the community that they have to confer, and this is not just about abortion, it's about so many things, and then people openly saying that why can't they take over the government that way? It's just not, it's not acceptable, it's not tolerable, it is wrong, And Jefferson and everyone who ever said otherwise is correct. And the First Amendment is our standard by which we should avoid, but don't. The mingling is a constant war like everything else on this planet right now. We have to set it straight. So, maybe driving gave me too much time to think about some of these things. But the daily headlines, and there are two big ones today. One is the war with extreme brutality continues in the Middle East. And the other is reviewing the stories that Trump would tell a jury that have no basis in fact or reality, and that people are actually thinking about, does he get an opportunity to do that? And I think that evidence that is not evidence doesn't go to a jury, period. And sometimes, in certainly lesser cases, that changes. That is to say, there are things that are close enough that you have to, because of facts that do exist, presented to a jury. But we've got the Pinocchio of all leaders in every historical context, running for president again, having tried to overthrow the election he lost. And nobody has a problem with, well, nobody effectively has a problem with that in terms of solving that question. So, enough for now. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.